The night after the curse fell over Obio-Umu, the village lay in a stillness that felt wrong. The usual hum of crickets, the soft rustle of leaves, even the distant call of an owl, all were gone. In their place, an unnatural fog clung to the ground, crawling slowly between the huts like a living thing, curling around mud walls, and sleeping beneath doors. Zara sat on the edge of her mat, her hands pressed tightly against her face. The red symbol on her palm burned hotter than ever, its glow casting harsh shadows across her frightened features. Every beat of her heart echoed in the silence, loud and heavy. The whisper from the forest echoed in her mind again and again. Bring her now. Outside, the trees trembled. Roots cracked the soil, twisting upward like dark serpents reaching for the sky. Branches clawed at the rooftops of the huts as though testing the walls, testing the people inside. The wind carried strange, almost human-like whispers, weaving around the village like fingers searching for weakness. Shadows moved unnaturally along the misted ground, stretching and shrinking in impossible ways, as if the forest itself was breathing. Zara's eyes darted to the edge of the village, where the dense line of trees that marked the forest of no return loomed like a black wall. A deep, guttural growl rolled from within its depths, vibrating through the ground. The sound was low, ancient, full of hunger and cunning. The forest was alive, angry, patient, and insatiable. Her mind raced. She could hear the cries of the villagers in the distance, muffled by the fog. She could hear the shallow, uneven breaths of Amara lying weak and frail in her hut. And she knew, deep in her bones, that the forest had chosen her as the bridge between life and death. Zara stood shakily, her legs trembling beneath her weight. Every instinct screamed to run, but running would do nothing. The forest would follow. It would hunt. It would demand its payment. The symbol on her hand paused again, a throbbing, living reminder of the death she had created, a death that had already begun to take its toll. And then, in the silence, a shadow detached itself from the mist, moving with impossible speed. It slithered across the ground, curling around fallen logs, brushing past the roots like it was testing the air. Zara's chest tightened. She could feel its gaze, unseen but undeniable, piercing through her. The forest was not just awake. It was aware. Her mind screamed a single question, over and over. Do I face it, or do I let everything I love burn? Zara's hand trembled as she lifted it toward the forest. The red symbol blazed, brighter than ever, and in that moment, the forest seemed to lean closer, its whispers sharper, its growl lower, its hunger more pronounced. Tonight, there would be no hiding. Tonight, the forest of no return would make its move. And Zara would have to choose her path. Morning should have brought light, warmth, and comfort. But when the sun rose over Obio-Umu, its rays felt weak, distant, almost afraid to touch the land. A thick grey mist still hovered above the ground, refusing to disappear. The air felt heavy, as though the entire village was holding its breath. Chickens did not crow. Goats did not bleat. Even the marketplace, usually alive with chatter and laughter at dawn, remained silent. Villagers stepped cautiously out of their huts, their eyes scanning the tree line. Mothers clutched their children close. Old men leaned heavily on their staffs, whispering prayers under their breath. No one spoke above a murmur, as if raising their voice might awaken something worse. Everyone had heard it in the night. The growl. The cracking earth. The whispering wind that sounded almost human. At the center of the village, inside a dim hut lit by a single flickering candle, Amara lay motionless on a woven mat. Her once vibrant skin now looked pale and drained. Sweat clung to her forehead. Her breathing was shallow, uneven, as if something invisible pressed down on her chest. Her mother wiped her face with trembling hands. She was strong yesterday, she whispered. She was laughing. The village healer knelt beside Amara, her weathered fingers hovering over the girl's forehead. Her eyes were clouded with fear, something the villagers had never seen before. She muttered ancient words under her breath, burning herbs that filled the hut with thick smoke. But the smoke twisted unnaturally. It curled upward, then bent toward the forest. The healer's hands began to shake. "She has been marked," the old woman finally said, her voice low and strained. "This is not sickness. This is not fever. This is a curse born of envy and awakened by darkness." The hut fell silent. Outside, villagers gasped. The healer continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "Only the one who awoke it can undo it." Those words spread through the village like wildfire. I slowly turned toward Zara. She stood at the edge of the gathering, her heart hammering so loudly she thought everyone could hear it. The red symbol on her palm paused beneath her sleeve, hot and accusing. It felt heavier in the daylight, not weaker. She swallowed hard. The forest loomed beyond the huts, its trees swaying though there was no wind. The shadows beneath them seemed thicker now, stretching longer across the ground, creeping closer to the village boundary. Zara felt it. Watching. Judging. Waiting. A sudden scream pierced the air. A young boy pointed toward the edge of the village. The ground near the forest shifted slightly, roots pushing up through the soil before retreating again, like something testing the barrier between two worlds. Panic erupted. Some villagers began packing belongings. Others argued. A few shouted that the elders should perform a sacrifice. Fear turned neighbors against one another. "Leave the village," someone cried. "We must flee before nightfall," another shouted. "But the forest blocks every path." And it was true. The usual footpath leading out of Obio-Umu was now overgrown with thick vines that hadn't been there yesterday. Dark branches arched overhead like a cage. The air near the forest felt colder, wrong. Even the children sensed it. They refused to step beyond their doorways. They clung to their mothers, staring wide-eyed at the moving shadows that stretched across the ground like reaching fingers. A baby began crying uncontrollably. Dogs whimpered and hid. The wind carried a faint whisper again, slithering between huts. Debt must be paid. Zara's stomach twisted violently. This was her fault. Every terrified glance from the villagers felt like a blade against her skin. Every shallow breath Amara took felt like a countdown. The healer stepped closer to Zara, her gaze sharp despite her fear. "You must return to where this began," she said quietly. "The forest has claimed its voice. It will not stop until it is satisfied." Zara's throat tightened. "What does it want?" she whispered. The healer did not answer immediately. Her eyes drifted toward the dark tree line. Then she spoke the words that froze Zara's blood. "The forest wants balance." A sudden gust of wind swept through the village, extinguishing the candle inside Amara's hut. Darkness swallowed the room. And from deep within the forest, a low rumble echoed again, louder than before. Closer. Obio-Umu was no longer simply afraid. It was surrounded. And Zara knew the time for hiding was ending. The elders gathered beneath the ancient Iroko tree at the center of Obio-Umu. Their faces were grave, lined with worry and something even heavier, resignation. The air around them felt tight, as though the entire village were waiting for a sentence to be passed. Finally, the oldest among them raised his staff and spoke. "There is only one path left," he said slowly. "The curse was born in the forest of no return, and there it must be undone." A murmur rippled through the crowd. All eyes turned to Zara. She felt the weight of their stares press against her skin. Shame. Fear. Blame. Hope. It was all there, tangled together. She wanted to run. She wanted to deny it. But when she looked toward Amara's hut and remembered her weak breathing, her trembling hands clenched into fists. Zara had no choice. The red symbol on her palm flared suddenly, as if agreeing with the elder's decision. A sharp pain shot up her arm, stealing her breath. The forest had heard. Before anyone could speak again, Zara turned toward the tree line. The mist thickened with every step she took. At the edge of the village, she paused. This was the boundary. Beyond this line, the elders said, the rules of the living world bent and twisted. Beyond this line, stories ended badly. Beyond this line, the forest did not forgive. Her heart pounded so violently she thought it might break through her chest. I will bring her back, she whispered to herself. And then she stepped into the twisted mist. The temperature dropped instantly. The air felt damp and heavy, sticking to her skin. The sounds of the village faded behind her, swallowed whole as though they had never existed. The forest of no return closed around her. The trees were taller than she remembered, impossibly tall, their trunks thick and dark, bark cracked like ancient scars. Their branches arched overhead, weaving together to block out the sun. What little light filtered through felt cold and pale. The ground beneath her feet shifted unnaturally. Roots moved. Not quickly. Not violently. But slowly, deliberately, curling and uncurling like fingers stretching after a long sleep. Each step Zara took sank slightly into the earth, as though the forest were testing her weight, measuring her. She glanced behind her. The path she had just walked was gone. Vines had slithered across it. Bushes had thickened. The mist swallowed every trace of her entry. The forest had sealed her in. A chill ran down her spine. Branches reached toward her as she walked deeper. Some brushed against her shoulders lightly, almost curiously. Others snagged at her clothes, tugging as though asking her to turn back. Or daring her to continue. Every rustle sounded like footsteps just beyond her sight. Every snap of a twig made her spin around, breath catching in her throat. But she was alone. At least, she thought she was. The red symbol on her palm paused again, brighter, hotter. It illuminated the surrounding trees in a faint crimson glow, revealing carvings etched into their bark. Symbols. Ancient markings. Some matched the one on her hand. Her stomach dropped. The curse had not started with her. It had been here. Waiting. A low whisper drifted through the trees, brushing against her ears like cold breath. Child of envy. She froze. The voice did not echo. It did not bounce. It felt close. Too close. I came to fix this, she said, her voice trembling despite her effort to sound strong. The forest responded with a deep, rumbling vibration that traveled through the ground and up her legs. Leaves trembled. Shadows shifted. Somewhere in the distance, something massive moved between the trees. The deeper she walked, the stranger the forest became. The air shimmered faintly, as if reality itself were bending. Dark shapes flickered between trunks, too large to be animals, too fluid to be human. I seemed to open briefly within the bark of trees, watching her pass. Judging her. Testing her resolve. Her breathing grew heavier. Not just from fear, but from the sensation that something was drawing closer to her chest. To her heart. The hunger. She could feel it now. It wasn't just anger. It wasn't just punishment. It was longing. The forest wanted balance. It wanted repayment. It wanted something that pulsed with life. And as Zara pressed a hand against her chest, she realized with a terrifying clarity. It wanted more than fear. It wanted sacrifice. A sudden gust of wind roared through the trees, extinguishing what little light remained. The red glow from her palm became the only illumination in the darkness. Ahead of her, the forest opened slightly. A narrow clearing. At its center stood an enormous, ancient tree, wider than any hut in the village. Its trunk twisted unnaturally, roots rising above the ground like the ribs of some colossal creature. The air around it vibrated. This was the heart. Zara swallowed hard, her entire body trembling. She had reached the place where everything began. And deep within the back of that monstrous tree, something moved. Something alive. Something waiting. The forest hunger was no longer distant. It was right in front of her. And it was smiling. Zara stepped into the clearing. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of wet earth and decay. Red mist slithered along the forest floor, curling around her ankles like living snakes, seeping into her senses and chilling her to the bone. The shadows that had flickered between the trees now coalesced, growing denser, darker, until they formed a shape that made her stomach knot with terror, a colossal, serpentine figure. Its scales shimmered like molten obsidian under the faint light that barely penetrated the canopy, each scale moving independently, rippling as if alive. Its eyes glowed a pale, wicked green, ancient, knowing, and cruel. The clearing itself seemed to bend and breathe. Branches stretched outward, clawing at the edges of the mist, creaking like the cries of the lost. The forest itself had a voice now, deep, resonant, and terrifying. "Why do you come, child of envy?" Zara froze. Her hands trembled violently, the red symbol on her palm searing hotter than ever. The air seemed to thicken around her, pressing against her chest, making each breath a labor. She forced herself to speak, her voice barely a whisper. I came to save my friend." A hiss erupted from the snake-like form, echoing off the trees, a sound that carried both warning and amusement. To save her, one must pay the ultimate price. The ground beneath Zara shuddered, sending waves through her legs. She stumbled but caught herself on a root, realizing with a sickening clarity that the forest demands were far beyond what she had expected. This was not a simple curse to reverse. This was judgment, a reckoning she could not ignore. From the depths of the mist, whispers rose, hundreds of voices, low and fractured, echoing through the clearing. They spoke in riddles, in warning, in mockery. Child of envy. Child of shadow. Only the brave, or the foolish, survive. Zara's heart thundered. She could feel the weight of her choices pressing down, the lives of the villagers hanging in the balance, Amara's fragile breath on her conscience. Every step forward felt like crossing a knife's edge. The serpent-like guardian of the forest slithered closer, its bulk crushing the earth beneath it. Zara could see its eyes lock onto hers, piercing, intelligent, as though it were reading every secret fear buried in her soul. "You carry the mark," it said, the voice resonating from its throat and from the very trees around her. "It burns because you are chosen, because the forest knows. It sees what you hide. It sees what you are capable of." Zara sank to her knees, trembling. Her palms pressed against the glowing mark. Sweat poured down her face, her chest heaving with terror. I'll do anything. I'll face it. The forest roared with a sound like 1,000 trees breaking at once. The mist swirled violently, revealing glimpses of shapes moving in the periphery, shadows of creatures that had once been human, twisted and tethered to the forest wall. The serpent's eyes narrowed. Its hiss became a command. "Step forward, child of envy. Face the trial, or let all perish." Zara's mind raced. Every instinct screamed to flee, but the weight of Amara's life anchored her. She took a trembling step forward, and then another. The ground quivered beneath her, roots rising like coils of serpents ready to ensnare her. Lightning split the sky above, illuminating the clearing. In that brief flash, Zara saw the forest in its true form, alive, aware, ancient, and unforgiving. Trees twisted into shapes resembling hands, faces, and creatures she could not name. The air vibrated with a low, menacing heartbeat. And then she heard it, the faintest whisper, almost drowned by the roar of the forest. "Only one will live, only one will survive." Zara's blood ran cold. She understood the truth now. The test was not just for her courage. It was for her soul. Her eyes filled with determination. She clenched her fist, feeling the heat of the curse burn into her, a reminder that she was chosen. She would face this trial. She would endure the forest's wrath. Because if she failed, the entire village would be consumed. And deep within her, a single thought took root. I will save Amara. No matter the price. The mist thickened. The shadows lunged. The forest held its breath. And the trial had only just begun. The forest of no return pressed closer, its shadows stretching like living chains that wrapped around Zara's ankles, tugging at her very soul. Every breath felt thick, heavy, as though the air itself was a punishment. The twisted trees groaned, their branches cracking and reaching toward her like jagged claws, hungry for a taste of fear. Amara's voice echoed in her mind, fragile yet desperate. Please, don't let it take you too. Zara stumbled, clutching her palm. The red mark burned hotter than ever, flames leaking through her veins. Sweat dripped down her face, mixing with the tears she could no longer hold back. She looked up at the snake-like guardian looming above her, its scales glinting like black fire, eyes piercing through the darkness. Every movement it made was deliberate, a predator sizing up its prey. Her mind spun with impossible choices. If she gave herself fully to the forest, if she surrendered her will and embraced the curse, Amara would be saved. She could feel it, a whisper of release, a fleeting vision of her friend standing tall, breathing freely. But surrendering meant losing herself. Becoming one with the darkness. Forever. If she resisted, the forest would consume everything. Villagers would fall under its wrath, their screams swallowed by the mist. And Amara might never survive. The whispers grew louder, echoing from the trees, the roots, the very earth beneath her. Child of envy, child of shadow, choose or lose all. Lightning split the sky above, illuminating the forest in jagged flashes. For a brief moment, Zara saw the forest's true form, an ancient, sentient being, alive, breathing, and merciless. The snake-like guardian's gaze followed her every movement, scales rippling with anticipation. Her heart thundered in her chest. Fear, guilt, and love collided violently inside her. She thought of every stolen glance of praise Amara had received, every compliment she herself had longed for. But now, those feelings seemed insignificant against the weight of life, death, and destiny. Zara dropped to her knees, her fingers pressed against the burning mark. She whispered to herself, almost a prayer. I will not fail you, Amara. I will face this. I will endure this. The forest responded, the wind howling like the cries of the lost. Shadows lunged at her, roots twisted to ensnare her. The snake guardian hissed, a sound that reverberated through her bones. The red glow on her palm flared, and a violent heat surged up her arms, threatening to consume her entirely. Time slowed. Every heartbeat felt like an eternity. Then, in a moment of clarity, Zara stood. She raised her hands, palms blazing with cursed fire. She faced the guardian directly, her gaze unwavering despite the terror clawing at her soul. I choose to fight, she shouted, her voice cracking with raw determination. The forest seemed to pause. The shadows froze mid-motion. Even the guardian recoiled slightly, as though surprised by the audacity of her will. Lightning struck again, casting the clearing in brilliant white light. In that instant, Zara felt the weight of every decision, every envy, every betrayal she had ever carried. The forest hunger pressed in on all sides, waiting for her to break. But she would not. Not yet. Amara's weak whispers reached her mind again, giving her strength. Zara, I believe in you. The forest hissed, the mist curling violently around her. The choice was made, a battle had begun, a test far beyond courage or fear. Zara's fate, the village, and Amara's life were all balanced on the knife edge of her decision. And somewhere deep within the twisting shadows of the forest of no return, something ancient and hungry stirred, watching, waiting, and preparing to judge. Because the forest does not forgive. it does not relent. And it does not forget. Zara's journey had reached its crucible. Every step forward was a battle. Every heartbeat a challenge. The reckoning had begun. And the world would never be the same. The wind shrieked through the trees, the shadows writhed, and the forest waited for her next move. The screen of destiny was ready to write the price. Episode 5 would decide who survives, and who becomes part of the forest forever. Will Zara risk herself to save Amara? Will the forest accept her sacrifice, or will it claim more? Episode 5 will reveal the truth, that nothing will ever be the same. Would you like to see the final episode of this story? Please like and subscribe and tell us in the comments where you are watching from.